right, welcome to the Imago Nutrition Podcast. My name is Mark Lesney. I'm one of your hosts, along with my sister-in-law, registered dietitian, nutritionist extraordinaire, Danielle Lesney. Danielle, how are you? How's things in the St. Louis area?
I'm good. How are you?
You were in the pool? You were in the pool this morning, right? I was not in the pool.
Yes, it was nice and warm because it was a cold, windy morning. So, teaching some swim lessons.
Very cool. Very cool. People should know you were a former D1 swimmer, right? You went to school at
University of Minnesota.
University of Minnesota. Yep, you can Google Danielle Lesney, University of Minnesota swim team.
You don't need to
find
do that.
a photo or something like that. So, looking forward to seeing the search results go up on that this week. Well, as I said, welcome to the Imago Nutrition Podcast, where we answer your questions and we bring you nutritional strategies to help you and your family flourish. And so we've got a fun one today. We've got an exciting episode, a great question. And so if you're one of those people that has perhaps a weight loss goal, a physique goal, but you don't particularly care for green food, i.e. maybe veggies, fruit, et cetera, you've got a bit of an aversion, we have a question about how to advance toward those goals when you hate everything green. And so with that, if you've got a question, by the way, you can head over to our website and ask us a question that may end up as an episode on this podcast. You can just head over to Imago Nutrition, that's IMAGO, imagonutrition.com/podcast. And there you can submit your question. That'll come to us. And we search through those, and that's part of how we generate the content for this episode, is from questions directly from you. Because it's one thing for us to get up and just talk about the things that we want to talk about. It's another thing to say, are we answering real questions from real people? And that's what we're trying to do here. So with that, speaking of real people, real questions, John in Pennsylvania asks this question. I love it. It's a great question. I hate everything green. That's not a question. That was a statement. I hate everything green. I want to lose weight, but if I stick to a standard diet, I'll deviate and binge eat. What foods are off limits? What foods do I have to eat? My goal is some weight loss, but ultimately to improve my physique. So I'm going to toss it to you, Danielle. As much as it may hurt you to hear something like I hate everything green, let's work through this a little together and compare some notes.
All right. Yes. Well, it's not the first time I've heard this many times, and I am a dietitian, so I will try to still find ways for you to enjoy those green foods. But yeah, we're probably talking about more than just green foods. Maybe we're not liking any colored vegetable or fruit. So kiwi is green grapes. So there's also some fruits in there that are green as well. So we don't really know the full extent to his question, but in general, just not liking necessarily your fruits or vegetables. We talked about it briefly in the first episode on finding ways to enjoy those foods, even if they're not your favorite. So going a progression, things that you don't really like, how can we get it to be indifferent? One way is to start with hiding those fruits or vegetables in casseroles, soups, stews, smoothies. Those are some ways to start when you're not liking something. For example, like a banana that's overly ripe is super sweet, and that will hide the spinach in your smoothie really well. My kids love it. They call it the green smoothie, but it's actually basically banana. And there's a ton of fresh spinach in the blender as well. So that's a good place to start when you're really not liking it.
I like it.
What?
That's a good tip for parents too. That's a sneaky trick. I dig that.
Yeah, right. And then when you are getting past that, I hate it, you're into this is okay, or you're indifferent to it, then that's when those can kind of sneak out of the cave a little bit. So trying to put them a little farther on the outside of your plate where you can see and taste them a little bit differently. Make sure you add the flavor with olive oil or dips or sauces, cheese sauce. You don't have to be afraid of the dips. I think a lot of people are thinking, I have to eat this carrot straight up raw. And so if that's not how you like it, grab the ranch or the guacamole or the hummus. Those are not taking away from the vegetable at all, because actually when you have fat with a vegetable, you're absorbing the fat-soluble vitamins better. So you're more able to absorb those fat-soluble vitamins. The other, then you're eventually hopefully going to be at the like stage where you find at least one way it's prepared that you can like it. So that would be my first tip, is to take some cooking classes, find some all veggie or all fruit recipes. Cookie and Kate is a really great resource. There's plenty of more of just vegetarian recipes where it could not necessarily have to be a side dish where it's the focus. But in something that you do already like, on a sandwich, right? You can put some lettuce and tomato on a sandwich pretty easily.
Sammy's. All right.
But yeah, and then the other thing I would say is, definitely recommend a multivitamin, age and gender specific. I don't typically recommend that. I prefer it from the food, but if you know you're really not eating those fruits and vegetables, it is a really good safety net, because you are getting tons of vitamins and minerals from your fruits and vegetables. But think about that. It's a safety net, right? You don't want to rely on that holding you. You'll be not thriving, right, if you're just relying on that multivitamin. So still try to eat the fruits and vegetables so you're not laying there in that safety net, and you can thrive more so. So what do you think? What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, your first point was kind of one of mine. My first thought on that was, well, hey, not all fruits and veggies are green, right? So I was curious if it's an aversion to only green, or was it speaking to a category more so? And to your point, we tend to take a general philosophy as having, formal nutrition training and saying food first, supplement second, right? And so focus on that food first, but we generally don't go right for a multivitamin unless we're trying to avoid a deficiency, right? And then, by the grace of God, we've got some modern techniques that we can deploy to fulfill deficiency. But yeah, my first thing was, well, not all food is green. And so that's great. And the classic example is like a bell pepper. Like I grew up, maybe my mom wants to correct me, but I only remember eating green bell peppers all my life. And I liked them. I'm not saying I didn't like them. But now I eat the red, orange, and yellow pretty much exclusively. That's what my wife buys. That's what we buy. And I actually prefer those way more. I think we talked about this too. I think my brother loves the green and you like the other ones, and I'm in the same boat. And so the question is, like with the bell pepper as an example, John, are you unimpressed with the green one, but could you think about the red, orange, and yellow? Or are you saying, well, no, when I meant green, I meant vegetables in general? Then there's a deeper issue. It's a kind of categorical issue. So that was the first thought. Second thought, because, John, you said, but if I stick to a standard diet, I'll deviate and binge eat. I would do the same thing. I think standard diets are dumb. And so that's just me coming out the gate. I think diets are dumb. I think they are defensive. I think they teach people to shrink away from food as opposed to pursuing food. I like nutrition to be offensive. You should be attacking food, attacking goals, attacking your calories, attacking your optimal intake levels, not shrinking away from food, right? So kind of to hinge on what you're saying, Danielle, is to think offensively about this. How can you break through this aversion for the sake of your health, for the sake of performance, for the sake of change? Because what you did say is you want some change, and this is a big part of it. And, we could go on a whole thing about fiber too, right? Like if you're not getting fruits and veggies, chances are you're low on fiber. People that do eat fruits and veggies a lot of times aren't hitting optimal fiber intake, and fiber is so critical. Danielle taught me that a year ago when we started this company. She was the one talking about fiber. I'm like, I started to check my levels. I'm like, I'm not getting enough fiber, right? And it's life-changing. And so, so I'm with you. Standard diets are dumb. Don't do a standard diet. What you need to do is set up some priorities that are flexible that you can begin to work on toward your goal. Okay, so part of his question was...
Before you go into that, Mark, hold on.
Yeah, do it.
Before you go into that, another motivation. Well, we do eat for taste, right? But sometimes it's nice to know, like, why am I eating this bell pepper or something green? So green foods have this chemical called lutein, which combines with another chemical that helps you keep your eyes healthy. So it decreases macular degeneration and reduces the risk for cataracts. So I thought that's kind of just nice to think about when you're eating that vegetable. If you don't like it, it doesn't taste like birthday cake, or at least trying to be able to see for the rest of your life. The other one for the pregnant moms out there, leafy green vegetables have an excellent source of folate, which is helpful for preventing birth defects. So those are just two of many, but just think about maybe dig into something you would be willing to try. Like maybe you're willing to try the spinach and the banana smoothie, and look, at what might be giving you some benefit from that. So that's
awesome.
all I was going to say.
No, that's perfect, because I think that's more of being offensive, right? Like pursuing that for a reason. John, don't try to eat green because Mark and Danielle said so. Like, try to eat green because there's actually benefit to you and your health and your goals and your wellness. And then again, just kind of start to deploy some of these practical strategies, like Danielle said, like hide it, bring it out of the cave, kind of go from I don't like it to I'm indifferent to maybe I start to enjoy certain kinds or other colors in that category. So I think that's great, because I think that's an offensive strategy, and I like that a lot. And so, in answer to your question too, John, when you say what foods are off limits and what foods do I have to eat, it's one thing to be talking about optimal health. It's another thing to be talking about I want to lose weight and improve my physique. The answer, if I could, I'm a nutrition science guy and Danielle's a dietitian, right? Like, yes, we want nutrient-dense foods to be priority, but that doesn't mean that you can't have fun foods, right? And so, like Danielle had said in one of the episodes past, like if you want your health to be an A, probably 90+% of your food should be nutrient dense. You should be stacking the numbers in your favor per your goals. These are your goals, not our goals, right? So you've got to own them and say, well, if I want to get an A in this, probably 90% of my food. But notice, even getting an A on the test doesn't mean you don't get to have birthday cake, right? Like, you still get that. That can be a part of the 10 if you want your health to be in a B, right? You should probably be eating more than 80% of your intake should be nutrient dense, right? And if you want it to be average, more than 70%, and you know how that works. And by the way, it doesn't have to be the same every week, right? Like, you could go 90, 90, 90, 90, 70 on vacation week, 90, 90, 80, and you can flex within that. It doesn't have to be, well, this is the diet I'm on for the rest of my life and I hate it, right? And so the answer to what foods are off limits and what do I have to eat, we can't make you do anything, and we're not going to tell you can't have certain foods. It's you contextualizing with your goals, the strategies that you want to put in place to achieve those. If someone doesn't have a weight loss goal, I don't need to talk about energy balance. It's not my dictation into their life. So if your goal is to lose weight, be healthier, and change your physique, you got to start laying out some practical strategies, because the science is clear on health, optimal intake, right? Fat loss, physique change, muscle growth, et cetera, et cetera. So what foods are off limits? None. Just think about how the proportionality is in your overall nutrition regimen, right? What foods do I have to eat? None. You don't have to do anything. But if you want more optimal results, start thinking about 90 plus, 80 plus, 70 plus, and then nutrient-dense foods. And real quick, if you're looking for a list, okay, what are nutrient-dense foods? Fastest thing we could do is just point you to a free section of our website real quick. Go to imagonutrition.com, imagonutrition.com/free. There's 2 documents up there currently. We're recording this in April of 22. There's 2 documents. One is a starter grocery list. Download the starter grocery list, and that will give you a list of incredibly nutrient-dense foods for your pantry, for your freezer, meat, seafood, et cetera, et cetera. So that'll at least get you going. It's not an exhaustive list, but it's a really great place to start. That's why we call it the starter grocery list. Again, imagonutrition.com/free. Now, the back end of your question, my goal is some weight loss, but ultimately to improve my physique. Okay, I love this question. This is where I spend a lot of time with clients, is exactly this. Okay, so a couple things. I'm not even going to tell you what food to eat and what you can't eat. I don't do that. I don't tell you what to eat or what not to eat. But there are certain priorities that you need to have in place. There are certain mechanisms you need to understand in order to achieve your goal of fat loss and improved physique. And I'm assuming by improved physique you mean maybe looking leaner, looking more athletic, looking more toned, quote unquote, perhaps more muscular. Okay? So real quick, there are certain fundamental principles that you need to rank, I would say, or look at in terms of priority. Number 1 is, you guessed it, energy balance. I don't think I could ever do an episode without talking about energy balance. Poor Danielle has to hear it yet again, right? But in the last episode, you brought it up first, so I'm not even entirely to blame. Okay, so number 1, just know this: in order for the body to lose weight and or fat, you need to achieve a negative energy balance on average over time. Simply put, if you burn 2,500 calories a day and you bring in 2,000 calories a day, on average over time, your body is in a 500 calorie deficit, it will lose weight. Okay? It will. It is the first law of thermodynamics. This is the fulcrum. This is the mechanism by which the body loses weight. This is not a theory. This is not a diet. This is not any of those things. And if any diet has ever worked, you mentioned standard diets. If a standard diet ever caused weight loss, it wasn't the diet. It wasn't the brand. It wasn't the name. It wasn't keto. It wasn't Atkins. It wasn't any of that. It was that it helped you achieve a negative energy balance. You can gain weight on keto. You can lose weight on keto. Keto is not the fulcrum. The negative energy balance is. So if you want to lose some weight, establish that negative energy balance over time. Understand your intake, fuel your results, have your expenditure be higher than your intake. So if it's 2,500, bring in 2,000 calories on average. You could reasonably lose about a pound a week in a 500 calorie deficit on average over time. Okay, so number one is energy balance per your goals. Number one is that negative energy balance. Number two, along with that, your protein intake needs to be optimal. For fat loss and muscle retention, the literature states somewhere between 25 to 30% of your calories coming from protein is optimal for a couple reasons. Number one, protein has the highest thermic effect of food of the three macronutrients. So when you ingest protein, you actually burn more calories digesting it than you do carbs and fats. That's a good thing. We want carbs and fats to be easier, more accessible for the body for energy. Protein has to do more work. It does more building. Okay, so that optimal protein intake for fat loss is critical for thermic effect of food. It also helps preserve and possibly gain muscle in the process, which is good for metabolism because protein helps build up muscle. And it's also highly satiating. Along with fiber, it's highly satiating, so it keeps you fuller longer. So let's say you're accustomed to eating 2,500 calories, and you're expending 2,500 calories, which is why you're not losing weight, and then you drop that to 2,000 calories. Now your body's going to send up hunger signals saying, hey, something is changing, something's different. And that's okay. That can be normal. Hunger signals can be a good thing, but they can also be an annoying thing. Okay, so one of the ways you want to mitigate that is by optimal protein, optimal fiber, to satiate the body so that you're actually full on less calories. Okay, so number one is energy balance. Number two is protein intake. Okay, number three is strength training. Pick up heavy things and put them back down. Okay, minimum 2 to 3 times a week is the starting point per muscle group. So if you're going to do 2 workouts a week, you got to do full body workouts. I'm talking push, pull, legs, chest, back, biceps, triceps, shoulders, legs, quads, hammies, calves. You got to hit all those twice a week, 2 to 3 times a week minimum to start stimulating some growth and some adaptation. And then from there, hey, once you get 2 to 3 times a week down, great. What does it look like to do it 3 to 4 times a week? What does it look like to do it 4 to 5 times a week? What does it look like to do it 5 to 6 times a week? Whatever that looks like. Maybe you never want to reach 6 times a week. Maybe you enjoy it. Maybe you don't. But know that as you increase muscle, you increase your basal metabolic rate. It makes it easier to lose fat, not only in the immediate, but keep it off in the long term. So again, energy balance, protein intake, strength training. Number 4, there's only 5 of these. We're almost there. LISS cardio. I would say LISS cardio is massively undervalued in the American mind. And what I mean by LISS is LISS, low intensity steady state cardio. Anything you can do for a prolonged period of time. Now, does this mean you need to start running 10 miles a day? No. You do not need to do any cardio technically to lose weight because you're in a negative energy balance. That alone will do it. However, is low intensity steady state cardio advantageous for the fat loss process? Absolutely. Research recently concluded that for folks that are in a negative energy balance that walked a minimum of 2.5 hours or only walked 2.5 hours a week, that's about 20 to 30 minutes a day, depending on how many days they walked, they accelerated their fat loss or weight loss process by 20%. Why? Because they're moving up their expenditure. So maybe they used to burn 2,500 calories, now they're burning 2,750, right? So they've moved that energy up. So don't underestimate getting out and just walking an hour, okay? 2 days in a row, 3 days in a row. What does that look like to become 4 days in a row and 5 days in a row? Low intensity, steady state cardio, whatever you enjoy, whether it's walking, biking, hiking, jogging, playing soccer, whatever you want to do, okay? Low intensity, steady state cardio. And then last is sleep. Sleep is also undervalued. Guidance in general, 7 to 9 hours for a lot of reasons we could go into, both practical and physiological. But sleep is very, very important. Allow yourself good quality sleep. That can't be overstated. So that's sort of your 5 priorities, if I had to put it. I do this a lot with clients. So energy balance, protein intake, strength training, low intensity, steady state cardio, and sleep are your priorities. You got to get brilliant at the basics before you can start worrying about the nuances. And these are the big ones, okay? So anything on that, Danielle? Anything you want to add or subtract from that?
I guess the only thing I would add is, like you mentioned, the fiber is what you're missing from the fruits and vegetables. And so where else you can find the fiber, the fiber one is going to help you feel more full on the least amount of calories. If you think about a small bag of chips, it's about 200 calories. You would not be able to eat that many calories in vegetables. You'd feel very uncomfortable. It would be equivalent to 2 whole cucumbers, a quarter of a cucumber, and 2 beefsteak tomatoes. So you'd feel very uncomfortable with that much vegetables at one time. So that's how you're going to help with getting to that negative energy balance, is you're going to be feeling full and satisfied on so much less calories when half of your plate is some type of fruit or vegetable. And then you can also get fiber in your grains and starches. So, bean or lentil pasta, sweet potatoes, brown rice, quinoa, all of those high fiber greens, those also can really help with feeling satisfied and decreasing the calories and getting into that negative energy balance. The only other thing I could think of is when you're talking about physique, you're thinking about how many times you want to do, like you mentioned, starting at the 2 to 3 times a week. If, women are listening right now and they're in the same boat of not liking the fruits or vegetables, and you're not looking to build muscle, you don't have to do that much of the strength. Women might not want as much of the bulk of muscles, but two times a week is not going to cause that bulk or what you're thinking about. People are women sometimes don't like that look.
Yeah.
I think you covered a lot. I think that's a really good question.
And I think the last thing too is, John, if you go to our website, I'm not plugging the website to try to drive traffic, although that's a nice little benefit. We want to have these tools that are helpful. The reason we write articles, the reason we have downloads is to be helpful. Okay, John, we may never meet you, we may never work with you, no worries. If that helps you, job accomplished. That's the point of this episode. But if you do go to imagonutrition.com/articles, I wrote an article called "The One Thing More Important for Weight Loss Than Your Diet." And the answer in that article is I lay out and point to the research. Every claim I make in all the articles, we point to the peer-reviewed research. It's a concept known as dietary adherence. No surprise, sticking to your diet is more important than the diet you're sticking to. Okay, and within that study, they showed 3 points of research as to what increases your chances of dietary adherence. Number 1 was managing hunger. We talked about protein, we talked about fiber, we talked about nutrient-dense foods, we talked about low or high volume, low calorie. Right? They can still be nutrient-dense and high volume without being calorie-dense, right? And so that's where some of these foods come into play. So number 1 was manage your hunger. Number 2 was keep a food journal, right? It's the brilliant thing about the human body or the human mind, is that when we're asked to start journaling what we eat, we start making different decisions. Like the researchers didn't have to do anything. They just said, write down at the end of the day everything you eat. And we notice that psychologically we start to put different guardrails on ourselves. Instead of 3 pieces of cheesecake, we're just going to do 1. Why? Because we have to write it down at the end of the day. And so what they've seen is keep a food journal. These days you can just download a free app and do that if you want. You can just keep a note on your phone. But they've seen that that's one of the things that helps people adhere to a diet is being asked to journal it. And the third one is fascinating to me. So John, you said if I stick to a standard diet, I'm going to deviate and binge eat. The third one, and again, if you read that article, I'll point to the study that showed it, and you could read the actual research. It says to keep your nutrition relatively similar to what you've been doing. What we don't want to do, John, is swing from your baseline. Let's say how you currently eat is your baseline. And you decide to do, I'll always pick on keto. You decide, well, I'm going to go lose some weight on keto, and you swing way over here on the spectrum into keto. It may work in the short term, but that is so far from your baseline that it is highly unlikely that will be sustainable long term. So what happens is you end up swinging back, and chances are you swing farther than your baseline, which you're alluding to, which is then you binge eat. So chances are the diets you've tried have swung you too far from your baseline, your normal nutrition regimen. And then what happens is you deviate from that and you binge eat. You would be shocked at the foods that I consume in my regular nutrition as part of that 10%. Like, I eat all the fun foods, all of them, you name it. I eat it all, love all the foods. But I keep it in that 10%, right? So it's not about can I have this or can I not, or do I need to remove all carbs from my diet because keto guy said so, right? Well, keto guy's wrong, per the research and per many other reasons. So all I would say, too, is don't swing far from your baseline. Start to implement some of these strategies with your current nutrition regimen. Start working some of these foods in. Start grappling with the concept of energy balance, optimum protein, optimum fiber, some strength training, some walking, some sleep. Notice that none of those things said what you can and can't eat, okay? And so that even goes right back to the research. That's not just me being like, oh, John, don't eat differently. That's studies that are showing that that's actually effective long term. And so I hope that helps, John. It's a great question. That was a lot of fun. Anything else, Danielle, from your perspective as we start to wrap up?
No, that's good.
Very
That's
cool.
about it.
Very cool. Well, if this has been helpful for all of you, John, anyone else listening, we'd appreciate just subscribe, leave us a review, let us know how we're doing. And if this episode resonates with you or someone you know has been asking about this, or you've got that friend that hates green stuff as well, or is trying to lose a little weight, trying to improve their physique a bit, or curious about what foods they need to eat or can't eat or should eat in order to make progress on their goals, do us a favor and share this episode. So you can also follow us on social media at Imago Nutrition, IMAGO Nutrition. And special thanks to Happy Pill, as always, for our theme song, Thinkin Bout Food, which is going to start right about now.